Okay, so the main thing that I'm going to be doing today, since yesterday was a less than ideal use of time, what I'm going to end up doing today, what am I doing today? What am I doing? What am I doing? I have decided that I am going to reward myself for uploading things. So there's this thing called the Skinner box. It's basically the more behavior is rewarded, the more often it happens. So I'm going to create positive reinforcement for uploading more informational content, which means mostly just talking about stuff, like I've been doing, but specifically in a more informational setting, which means that the tone is going to need to be slightly less, I don't know, I was going to say slightly less informal, but I don't really see that happening. Just more informational. Talk about informational shit. And so one of the things that I've been reading is more, well, what have I been reading? Do people still read? Look at that shit. I can't read that shit. Ugh. So like today's informational bit, I read some stuff. It was more of I was basically just retreading old pathways by reading Ready, Fire, Aim. The whole reason it has that name in the first place is because it wants to stress the supremacy of selling, because if you're not selling stuff, you're not getting paid, and if you're not getting paid, you don't have a business. That goes for pretty much everything. You tweak your products to make them more interesting so that people can buy them, not because of any intrinsic characteristic in and of itself. Now, one of the things that I did end up finding interesting is when we're talking on the subject of designing products, there are two things, I guess two sides of the same thing, depending on how you look at it, that Seth Godin talks about, where, you know, I might want to end up spending more time on the creation of a good product before I end up releasing it, or at least a suite of different projects that are relatively fast and efficient to release. One of them could be, well, the main concept is going to be complements. Taking two things that go together and offering them in the same package. The infamous example of this would be Cracker Jack. You get caramel corn, whatever, plus that little sticker inside. It's aimed at children. What do kids like? Toys and stuff. So you put one in a box. That tactic has been replicated in a whole bunch of other ways. I'm pretty sure every cereal brand that can afford to do it has done it at least once. But it can be taken out into a much wider context. In the case of selling online courses, the most common thing is upselling like an hour of consulting time. If you walk into a fast food chain, you ask for a burger, they ask you if you want fries with that. It creates more value to be able to add different things into the same bundle so that, hell, even one thing can subsidize the purchase of another. Although, on a more conceptual basis, this bundling effect could be done to concepts as well. If you ever look at a Rolex, no one actually buys the time. We can get it down to measurements of time more precise than any human will ever realistically be able to experience. Really, they just want the social proof of saying, hey, look, I own this fancy ass goddamn watch. You can get anything that just tells the time reasonably well enough at Kmart for $10. So, using either actual products that people like or concepts that I would be able to use for modeling purposes, it really just sort of depends on what one would be able to add value with the products. But the point is, once you have the products up, running, and ready, you don't want to waste any more time than that. Get it minimally viable and just sell the shit out of it. And don't just sell it in one way. Sell it in at least 4 different ways. That way you'd be able to see, you know, if there's a good product market fit in one particular market. Start off with your hunch, naturally, but don't just stop there. Try other markets to see if your hunch is wrong, because, well, humans are not being infallible might be worth a shot. It'll tell you more things about your product offering, and since, you know, the whole point of it is to sell it to other people, your opinion is arguably the one that matters the least. It lets you know how the, quote, real world, how the marketplace is actually going to react to your offering. So you don't spend this time building this masterpiece that no one actually wants. And that's why the supremacy of selling is going to be so important. Which is why I keep coming back to the whole, hey, just get this minimum viable thing out and be done. Another thing that I find fascinating about Japan, I literally don't think I've ever seen a bike lock being used. Like, do people not worry about getting their shit yanked? Ever? The fact that it doesn't happen is kind of astounding. Literally no bike locks ever. There's a joke here. So it's one of those things that you don't really notice until you do, and then you can't unsee it. What I have right now is a huge knowledge gap between where I want to be and where I am. So in order to overcome that, you know, I keep talking about making an online course, and that is the goal, the objective on my way to the long-term goal of being a world-class consultant. That being said, I can't actually do any of those jobs effectively if I don't have a deep understanding of what I want, and so prioritizing the creation of a course predicated on knowledge that I don't feel confident that I currently have seems like a plan that'll be relatively, you know, unstable. So what I'll end up doing instead is mostly focus on putting up, well, in addition to, I'll just be putting out informational content all the goddamn time. See if I can do one book review per day, and if that ends up being too much, I'll slow it down a bit to one per every 2 to 3 days. But at this point in time, I'm not getting a good return on my time because I'm not really doing much with it. So there's that.
All right. So when I saw this, I had to try it. So it's pizza, but it's mayonnaise and corn. So yeah,
It's actually pretty good. So it'll be important for me to do the knowledge thing. And what I mean by that is just take my education seriously. I just watched a video that was titled The Cult of Dan Lok. He's a guy that I've been following a little bit recently. And, well, him upselling high-end consulting things, basically to the people he's selling to the people he's supposed to be empowering, was kind of a bit of a disillusionment. Had me disillusioned. Words, grammar, English. Oh my god, I found it! It's a locked bike! Now this is some neat architecture. Granted, there are like cameras and stuff, but still not a goddamn